our modern society relies on the energy that oil and gas can provide. It's essential to many of the things we do. Yeah, of course, 400,000 New Zealanders use natural gas directly to heat their homes, cook their food, and there are of course applications for which only natural gas can create. You can't make steel, for example, without that process heat. You can't process some of the food that we generate in New Zealand without that. And not to mention the very, very many number of things that we all use and consume every day that don't involve the burning of oil and gas and therefore the release of any emissions. So I think it's an essential fuel and it doesn't have replacements for everything.
Your opponents, of course, would say you're not moving fast enough towards being sustainable. What's your response to that?
Well, we obviously accept the consensus view around the science on climate change, but you're right, we have a different view as to the pace of change and the manner of that change. To give you an example, there's a technology called carbon capture and sequestration, which essentially means you capture the emissions rather than venting them to atmosphere, and you put them back into the earth from where they came. Currently in New Zealand you can't do that under our law, so if an activity is unable to be undertaken under our law, it's very hard for a company to do that. At a process change level, we're always tweaking our plants and facilities to make sure that they are in fact, there's no fugitive emissions. The actual production of oil and gas is less than 1% of New Zealand's emissions. So we think we're doing our part, but of course there are people who use and consume these things every day, and ultimately they will be the arbiters. If they wish to continue to have the benefits of natural gas and the prompt energy that it provides, then we will keep providing it to them, and the emissions challenge is one that we all have to work on.
Now, of course, business is unavoidably about money. Can sustainable sources of energy be profitable? Is that something that you've looked at and you're happy with the answer?
Well, I guess the language is important here. So if by sustainable you mean low or no emissions, because the challenge around changing climate is about reducing anthropogenic emissions, then yes. I've already mentioned there are some things we'd like to do that we can't, that would actually reduce emissions. So yes, I think they are. Of course, other forms of energy, particularly for electricity generation, New Zealand is blessed with a lot of hydro, some wind resource, some geothermal, and that's fantastic. But not everything is able to be electrified. Indeed, our renewables aren't always available when we want them, and you do need something to make up that gap. Just to give you a sense of the scale, the role that natural gas plays in our electricity system is the equivalent of 6 to 8 Lake Taupos of water. So that's a very, very large battery that someone would need to build. In fact, someone's done the figures on this and suggests that it's about $500 billion of grid-scale Tesla batteries to replace that. Now, not to say that that cost won't come down or technology won't change, but where we sit today, that's not really feasible without electricity prices going immeasurably through the roof for people, and I'm not sure that that's actually what people want. There's a trade-off to be made here between lower emissions, energy pricing and energy security, knowing it's there when you need it, and getting that balance right is what our focus is.
Obviously, politically, you have to achieve a balance between profitability for your industry and meeting a social license around sustainability. Are there any forces that are external to your industry that are blocking you, like the car industry? Where do they sit? Are they with you or against you? Are they supporting what you're doing?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I can't really speak for the car industry or what they may or may not be doing. Certainly, by observation, I can see that there's an increasing use of electric vehicles, but that's coming from a very low base. So while growth is high, it's coming from a very low base. In the right application, EVs will be a great solution, but they won't be right for every application. I can't see too many farmers, for example, having EV tractors. That's just the nature of batteries is unlikely to make that a reality. Long haul transport, similarly, doesn't, because of the weight distribution of batteries. I can't see that being the answer, but certainly zipping around town here, short commutes, absolutely. EVs have got a really important place and a role to play.
On Friday we saw 170,000 people around New Zealand marching, including hundreds here in Queenstown.
Sure.
It's a real cause for concern. Can these people be your allies, or do you think you're forever doomed to be fighting each other head on?
Oh, so we're not fighting the school strike for climate change movement. In fact, we've met with them. It'd be fair to say we don't share views on a number of things, but we're certainly open to talk about it. Over the years, we've invited Greenpeace to our conferences. They choose not to attend, and that can't force someone to come and have the dialogue with us. But we're certainly open to talking. As I set out at the beginning, we just have very different views about how to achieve the emissions reduction and over what time frame, while we balance that trilemma of energy equity or cost, sustainability in terms of emissions intensity, and security of supply. So knowing that it's available when you switch on your light. So for example, one of the demands of school strikes for climate change is to immediately end all production and exploration for oil and gas. Unfortunately, our country would grind to a halt, and I'm not sure that's actually the outcome that group is seeking. There's always, life is always a set, trying to balance competing priorities, and that's what we're trying to do.